Hi guys, welcome to another video. This is Vamos Gaming Systems. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to be talking about used GPU deals in Singapore for the month of November 2025. So, if you're planning to upgrade maybe one of your old gaming PCs, you might have wanted to consider a GPU upgrade, but the brand new GPUs might seem a little bit too expensive for you. So this is where used GPUs are where the deals are at. Okay, so let's go straight into it. So this spreadsheet has been remade. Previously, the one that I made for months ago has been accidentally deleted when I was clearing out my Google Drive, so pretty unfortunate. So I remade this, but it's only for the month of November 2025. How it actually works is GPU is ranked by performance, by lower the better. So you have your 5090 at the bottom of the list, and you have the weakest GPU that I can consider as modern as the 1060 6GB on the top of the list. Then how these are ranked is I go through the tech power up list. Example, if you search for 1060, you will see a tech power up entry. You click on it, wait for it to load. You go to relative performance chart, you will see that 1060 is ranked here and RX 580 is actually ranked higher in terms of performance. So this is how I get this GPU ranking list on the left via Tech Power Up's relative performance ranking list. Okay, so let's go straight into it. For the cheapest prices are listed on here in this column here, and then I subsequently copy them over on the sections on the right, so to categorize them in price budget range. So let's, for less than 100 Singapore dollars, if you're considering like a really cheap upgrade, maybe you're upgrading a Dell Optiplex or any cheap PC that you could find without any GPU in it, then you want like a really cheap, like less than $100 option to just get to gaming, playing some esport titles like Dota 2, League of Legends, and so on and so forth. The cheapest option I can find that is relatively, well, performance okay, that's performing okay, you can definitely play all your esport titles, even like Apex Legends on it, will be a 1060 6GB for the NVIDIA, people who want NVIDIA. And if you're okay with going AMD, I would say the RX 580 8GB is actually not too bad as well, because the RX 580 8GB is actually one of the most popular GPUs back during the second crypto boom, where like crypto mining was really started to get popular, and a lot of people bought RX 580s for mining, but they were also really good performing gaming graphics cards. And they also come with 8GB of VRAM, which was more VRAM than most of the NVIDIA counterparts. And yeah, performance wise, they are like relatively similar. The RX 580 will perform slightly better because of its higher VRAM buffer, and both you can find them for about 50 Singapore dollars. For, let's look at 1060. So 1060 on carousell.sg, you can find one here for $50, 1060. Any others at $50, 75. There's one guy selling, this is 1063GB, so go for the 6GB one, 90, 75. Any others at $50? This is 3GB. No, not that good. No good. The larger the VRAM buffer, 90. This is 3GB, so 3GB. This is $65 still okay. So relatively around there. I could only find one at $50. Then moving on to the next one, RX 580. So RX 580, yep, you can get them for about $50 to $60. So quite a few listings at 60 Singapore dollars. There's one here listed at 50 Singapore dollars. So you can easily find RX 580s for $50 to $60 range. Whereas for the 1060 6GB, you can only find one at 50 Singapore dollars. So I would say the RX 580 is probably the better choice at this lowest end budget range. If you're going for the top higher end of 100 Singapore dollar range, I would say the 1070 Ti 8GB would be the best value. In terms of performance, 1070 Ti 8GB is actually the same performance as a 1080 or the same performance as a 5600 XT 6GB. And it performs better than the 1660 Super 6GB, and it has more VRAM than the 1660 Super. The 1660 Super is also a pretty popular card. Yeah, so let's search for it. 1070 Ti. It is an 8GB VRAM buffer. So the cheapest I could find was $90 at the time that I did my research. Let's take a look. There's one here. So listed 1 month ago for 90 Singapore dollars. The rest of it is about 110 to 150, 130, $100, and another one 1070 Ti Mini at 90 Singapore dollars. So at this price range, yeah, this is actually not too bad. You could also consider the alternatives, which is the 1080. So if you can't find any 1070 Ti's, the 1080 will perform just slightly better. Same amount of VRAM, but a little bit more expensive. 1660 Super is actually not so attractive right now because the prices for 1660 Super is more than 100 Singapore dollars, but it performs worse than the 1070 Ti 8GB. Okay, then moving on from 100 to 200 Singapore dollars, surprisingly, do not get the 3050. The 3050 actually is really poor in performance. Like it's performing worse than the 1660 Super, even though it has 8GB of VRAM, but because it's a relatively newer card, people are selling it used for at least 170 Singapore dollars. So you can easily get cards which perform better than the 3050, such as the 1070 Ti for a lot less, like only 90 Singapore dollars. And your 1070 Ti can already beat the 3050 very handily in terms of performance. So do not get the 3050. Skip all of the 50 series cards. Those are all trash. 1080 at $110 is a good consideration. Similarly, it performs similarly to the 1070 Ti, or you can consider a newer architecture, which is the 2060 Super 8GB. The 2060 and the 2060 Super are kind of different cards. Even though they perform relatively the same, the 2060 Super actually performs, yeah, it's in the same performance range, but it has 2 extra gigabytes of VRAM buffer, which is really important for modern games. You really want to have as much VRAM as possible. 6GB really is not enough for today's games, unless you're only purely playing esport titles. You're on an ultra low budget, 6GB can still make it. But like I mentioned, it's like if you're paying $50 for 6GB GPU, it's okay. But even at $50, you can get an RX 580, which gives you 8GB of VRAM. So just go for more VRAM. That's why a 2060 Super will be my recommendation, and it's actually cheaper than a 2060 non-Super. So let's take a look at 2060 Supers. 2060 Super. 175 is expensive. Anything at 120. 2060 Super. This one I'm not so sure. It's a bundle. 190, 190. These are all slightly expensive. 200 is too much. Wait, is it gone? Oh no, the deals might be gone. Oh no. Oh, let me go by recent. Here. There's 150 here. Oh no. Is it this one? Yeah, the deal might be gone. Nope. It doesn't say selling price, so don't bother. Huh? I saw it at 190, 150. I think the deal for 2060 Super for 120 is gone. Yeah, that changes the recommendation a lot. Yeah, cheapest we could find it earlier, that this from 2 years ago. Yep, so the cheapest one is gone, so it's 150. So that changes the recommendation quite a fair bit. At this performance range, then the 1080 would be way better at $110. When it's $150, I would say skip it and go for my next recommendation, which is Radeon RX 6600 non-XT. So 6600. Let me put an RX in there. RX 6600, let's see whether we can find one at relatively cheap price. 140, this is 130, so this is decent. What else? Yeah, 140. This 5600 XT, 130. So RX 6600 non XT at about 130 Singapore dollars. This would perform better than the 2060 Super, and it has same amount of VRAM at 8GB. So when the 2060 Super is no longer cheap, it's like 150 to 200 Singapore dollars, then it's no longer worth it. Then you might want to really skip it. So I think the one that I scouted at $130 was already sold. So the 6060 non-XT would be the better recommendation at $130 on the lower end of $100. And if you're going for the higher end of $100, like don't pay $200 for 2060 Super when you can get a 1080 Ti 11GB, the GOAT of all GPUs, the greatest of all time, for 170 Singapore dollars. So 1080 Ti. Let's do a search. Yep, 180 Singapore dollars is well used. 170, it's 180, 170 is still good. 199, yeah, this is another one at 170 Singapore dollars. The 1080 Ti is really old, but why it's so good is because it comes with 11 gigabytes of VRAM. So the VRAM buffer is really good for just a mere 170 Singapore dollars. If you go into any like GPU review, like from Hardware and Box, Gamers Nexus, and so on, wherever they review a new GPU, if you scroll through the comment section in their YouTube video, I am almost 100% sure you will find at least 1 or 2% that's saying that I'm still rocking my greatest of all time GPU, my 1080 Ti. And that means they're not planning to upgrade. Like even if they're looking through all the new GPU videos, they are judging the new GPU prices and referencing to how it performs versus their 1080 Ti. 1080 Ti has 11 gigabytes of VRAM. In terms of performance, it's actually performing similarly to an A770, which is a pretty like it was a Intel Arc card that was launched a few years ago, and it was the highest performance range of the Intel Arc card, A770. The 1080 Ti performs the same, and it's such an old card. 1080 Ti is like, how old is it? 1080 Ti. It was launched in 2017. Wow, that's not that old. 2017 is 8 years ago. So a GPU from 8 years ago, and it's actually, yeah, it's performing better than a 3060 12GB. It is performing similarly to a 2070 Super 8GB. So 1070 Ti, 11GB, the GOAT of all GPUs. So if you're in the price range of looking for a used GPU for less than 200 Singapore dollars, my go-to recommendation would be flat out the 1080 Ti 11GB. So good. It definitely will beat the 5700 XTs because of the higher VRAM buffer, and it's performing better than the 5700 XTs. It's like, yeah, it's a few GPUs away, not even close. So moving on to the 2 to 300 Singapore dollars range, a lot of people will recommend the 3060 12GB, but it's selling for 250 Singapore dollars. Why it's so expensive is because the 3060s are still very useful for AI rental rigs, whereby people actually set up rigs with multiple GPUs like 3060s. They put a good CPU and RAM in there, and then they rent it out to the cloud for people to pay to use it for AI, like rendering or AI AI training and so on and so forth. We really don't know what people use the rental rigs for, because it is, well, the amount of workload they do on it is definitely private. So we don't really know. But it is being used because of it's one of the cheapest NVIDIA GPUs with the highest VRAM buffer of 12GB. And why NVIDIA GPUs? Because NVIDIA GPUs use CUDA, which is what all the modern large language models, the AI models, use. And that's why AMD GPUs are not popular. Even though AMD GPUs have higher VRAM buffers, people still want 3060s for AI. That's why the resale value of 3060s is still relatively high. If you look at the 3060 Ti, which is a better GPU in terms of performance, it's actually selling for a lower price. So if you're in the low end of 200 Singapore dollars, I would suggest a 2080 Super 8GB. 2080 Super. Yep, we have one here, 200 Singapore dollars. Anything more than 200 Singapore dollars is really not that attractive. Like at 250 is no longer that attractive. A 2080 Super performs about similarly to a 6700 XT and actually performs the same as a 7600 XT 16GB, which is a more modern AMD GPU. So 2080 Super definitely no slouch. It's actually one of the highest end GPUs in the 2000 series. Of course, the highest end being the 2080 Ti, which you might also get it at 199. This is a huge recommendation if you can get it at 199. Let me put it in bold. Let's try and search. So at the low end of $200, 2080 Ti. Yeah, this guy is selling a 2080 Ti for 199. This is the only listing that is so cheap. Because if you look at the other 2080 Ti's, they're all around the $300 price range, 270, 300, and even at 300 Singapore dollars, actually is not bad. This one is 200 Singapore dollars, but it's 5 months ago, and it says read description, so it might be faulty. Yeah, it's very faulty. Even a faulty 2080 Ti, this guy is trying to sell for 200 Singapore dollars. It's a scam. Yeah, even a modded 2080 Ti is being sold here. But anyway, for the 11 gigabytes of VRAM, if you can get 2080 Ti at 200, even 300 Singapore dollars, I would say it's not too bad. Because how does a 2080 Ti perform? It performs similarly to a 4060 Ti 16GB, and it performs similarly to a 3070. It has actually more VRAM than a 3070, of course, but these two GPUs are in the same price, in the same performance range, 3070 and 2080 Ti, and they definitely will perform better than a 3060, definitely will perform better than a 3060 Ti, definitely outperforms a 2080 Super. So if you can get this last 2080 Ti that is on carousel for 199, I would say it's a really good deal for 200 Singapore dollars. Even if you can't get it, then the rest at 300 Singapore dollars, you might want to weigh your options, because when it goes to the higher end of 300 Singapore dollars, then a 3070 might be a better consideration, maybe, because the 3070 is a relatively more modern GPU, but it has a lot less VRAM, only at 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But if you look at like FPS performance, since 2080 Ti and the 3070 are performing similarly, it's really your call whether you want a more modern 3070 or you want the older 2080 Ti with more VRAM. In my call, I would say go for the 2080 Ti, because the more VRAM will actually mean longer longevity, and Nvidia has been known to give pretty long support, like at least 7 to 8 years of support for their GPUs. Like only the 1000 series GPUs have recently been cut off from driver support. So I would say 2080 Ti is, yeah, probably has a few years left of support to go, so definitely should last you for a good few years. That will be my recommendation. Well, otherwise a 3070 is actually not bad too. 3070 is a very default, like a pretty standard go-to esport gaming card. It performs really well. The only problem is that 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but you will run into issues when you're trying to play like AAA games at higher resolutions like 1440p, where definitely the 3070 can play. It can definitely 3070 can support like all your modern esport titles at 1440p and 4K. I would say playing like Overwatch, maybe Dota 2, all that at 4K would definitely be no issues for 3070. Maybe for Marvel Rivals, maybe not, because Marvel Rivals is actually very demanding because of its engine. Okay, let's move on. 300 to 500. For 3 to 500 Singapore dollars, well, recommendation depends. I would say at the low end of $300, my go-to recommendations would be, if you're going for Nvidia, would be the 3070 Ti 8GB. It's not too bad. Or my biggest recommendation would be the 6800 XT 16GB, because of the 16GB of VRAM buffer, and it performs better than the 3070 Ti. But let's just double check 3070 Ti prices first. So 3070 Ti, whether we can even find one. You can see there's a lot of 3070s. Yep. But for now, it's pretty expensive. $340. Yeah, 350, 340. Yep. We don't have anything at 320 though. $350. Yeah. Well, at 350 isn't not such a great recommendation anymore. Yeah, I think the cheapest I can find now is like 350. Oh, there's one at 300. 22 days ago, 3070 Ti, 8GB, 300. Yeah, so this is the cheapest one I can find, but there's only one of them listed at 300. The rest is like 340, 350, so not that great comparing to the other option, which I highly recommend, the 6800 XT. The cheapest I could find it on my list was 340. Let's see whether we can still find it. Most of them will be listed for about 400 Singapore dollars or more, like 400, 400, 400. Even at 400, it's actually pretty good. 330. Yep. So this guy, the Yeston Sakura one, listed at 330, and then the Astrock card is listed at 340. So the 6800 XT is super duper good because it has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, double the VRAM buffer of the 3070 Ti, and it performs better than the 3070 Ti. If you look at the 6800 XT, it's ranked here. So 6800 XT actually outperforms the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte, which is the latest like mid-range card that was launched by AMD, or the 9000 series. So it's like your 6000 series card from 2 generations ago is actually outperforming a 9000 series card, which is launched just a few months ago, with same amount of VRAM, 16 gigabyte, at 200 Singapore dollars less, because it's like 340 compared to if you were to buy the 9060 XT brand new, is 500 plus 520. So you're saving 200 Singapore dollars less for more performance, which is really great. Now the only downside to this would be that AMD recently had a scare, like by announcing that they were putting the 6000 series GPUs into maintenance mode, which means not giving them up-to-date drivers for all the brand new games. And there was a big hoo-ha over the span of like simple 4 days. The whole gaming community, myself included, made a video about it. We tried to make as much noise as possible to oppose AMD and its bad decision, because the 6000 series, as like the 6800 XT, is super value, is super good value at its current resale price for its current performance range. I highly recommended it, but if they're not going to give it any driver support, then the GPU is effectively dead DOA, right? It's going to arrive DOA when you buy it. Not that it's not going to work, it's still going to work for old games, but new games, you might come into crashes when you play new games. So 6800 XT 16 gigabyte, I can't say enough good things about it. My really go-to recommendation, if your budget is around the 300-ish Singapore dollars, even at 400 Singapore dollars, you should consider it. The alternative is 3080. So a 3080 obviously is a pretty famous card. And even though I know that there's a 12 gigabyte version, but in Singapore, you really cannot find the 12 gigabyte version. You can find 12 gigabyte 3080 Ti's, but not 12 gigabyte 3080s. Cheapest I could find 375. 399, one here. Is there any at 375? Most of them are listed for about 400 or more. Yeah, mostly at 400. I don't see any 3080s for cheaper than 400. Maybe the one that was cheaper was sold 600, definitely not worth it. 590 Ti. Yeah, looks like it's gone. 380. Yeah, 375. 380 is the cheapest I could find. One. Yeah, so at 380, it's not as attractive as the 6800 XT because both of these GPUs perform similarly. You can see that in terms of ranking, the 3080 actually outperforms the 6800 XT just barely. But it is selling for more and for way less VRAM. It's only 10 gigabytes of VRAM because this is not the 12 gigabyte version. And with 10 gigabytes of VRAM, you are already having less VRAM than 5070. And if you're trying to play modern games like Monster Hunter Wilds or AAA titles that has very big textures at least 1440p, then you might run into issues with a 3080. Even though the 3080 is a pretty new card, it was like one of the most popular high performance cards only back during the COVID era, the crypto boom era of like 5 years ago. So a 5-year-old card already like running into VRAM issues is really unfortunate for the level of performance that it offers. So it is not as good, not as highly recommended as the 6800 XT, but still not too bad if you have to go NVIDIA. Otherwise, you have to pay higher to go NVIDIA will be the 3080 Ti, because the 3080 Ti will give you slightly more VRAM at 12 gigabyte of VRAM. Oh, there's one at 420, which is expensive. Like 3080 Ti, 3080 Ti, this 650. Let's what? There's one guy selling it for 350. Oh, okay, 350 is not too bad. At 350 is, yeah, same price as 1600 XT. Yeah, so this is a pretty cheap 3080. 3080 Ti. Where can we get a cheap one? 750. Ooh. 600. Is there anyone at 500? Could have been sold. Only the water block. Yeah, this is the one. So listed 13 days ago, 2 weeks ago, the 3080 Ti Vision OC. But you can see that this is the only one that is listed at 500 Singapore dollars. The next one is at 550. So it is getting expensive. It is getting more than 500 Singapore dollars. So that's why I really recommend the 6800 XT, because you can see it performs, 6800 XT will perform well less than the 3080 Ti. 3080 Ti is performing in the range of a 3090, in the range of a 4070 Super, and the 6800 XT is actually several GPUs, it's ranked several GPUs below it. So it is like one performance tier down. If you are downgrading from 3080 Ti to the 6800 XT, but the 6800 XT will save you a lot more money. It will save you like at least 150 Singapore dollars if you can get the 6800 XT for about 340, 350. Whereby 3080 Ti, there's the only one at 500. So once that sells out, or if the person is not responding to you, then your other 3080 Ti's, you're only getting it about 600 to 650, which is way too much money. The other alternative would be another Radeon card, would be the 6900 XT. Yep, so you can get 6900 XTs for about 500 Singapore dollars. There's at least 2 of them listed at this price range. So the same price as a 3080 Ti, and in terms of raw performance, 6900 XT is almost within striking distance of a 3080 Ti. 3080 Ti still performs better, but it has less VRAM. So because the 3080 Ti only has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is maybe sufficient for most modern games, but if you're playing at 4K or 1440p resolution for even some of the more demanding games at higher texture settings, your 12 gigabytes of VRAM is gonna run out. So 6900 XT will be a better choice if you want a more future-proof like GPU with more VRAM. Okay, gotta move on. We are already we're already half an hour into the video, so we gotta speed up a little bit. Next category, 500 to 800 Singapore dollars. At this price range, my NVIDIA recommendations would be the 5070 12 gigabyte. Somehow there's one guy that I found on Carousell. They're selling it for only 700 Singapore dollars. It's just a box, 5070. Yeah, 5070. I don't know whether it's still there. It might have been sold already. This is a good 5070 Ti. Yeah, so this is the only one that I can find selling it brand new for 700 Singapore dollars. But other than that, well, you could always consider a 5070 Ti. But a 5070 Ti is actually way above 800 Singapore dollars. The cheapest one I can find is like 990. Is that true? 990, 5070 Ti. So that's a different kind of price bracket. So otherwise, a 4070 Ti 12GB is also similar in performance than the 5070. A 3090 is also a consideration, but 3090s are about 1,000 Singapore dollars, so a different price bracket. And 3090 actually performs same as the 5070 and 4070 Ti, just that it has a lot more VRAM. 3090s are expensive because, again, high VRAM buffer, good for AI. Than 4070 Ti. So the 4070 Ti, unfortunately, is also only a 12GB card, so not a lot of VRAM. 4070 Ti, not that easy to find it at a cheap price of 725. Where was it? It might have been sold. Yeah, I'm not able to find it. Most of the 4070 Ti's I see on carousell are actually bundled with PCs, and yeah, I think it might have been sold. So we might not be able to find it. Oh, is it this one? Yeah, for 725. My bad, I just missed it. Yep. So this is the only one listed for the only 4070 Ti 12GB that's listed as 725. Anything other than that, you have to pay a lot more. Then at this price range, I would say, yeah, there are no really good options. I would say buy brand new. Probably buy a brand new 5070. Otherwise, what other brand new cards might be good? Yeah, not really a lot. I would say pay a little bit more and maybe consider a 9070 XT. A 9070 XT is about 900 Singapore dollars brand new. 845 is the cheapest I could find used. Or maybe consider a 7900 XTX. Let's see whether we can find a 7900 XTX for about 800 Singapore dollars. Most of them are listed for about 1,000 plus Singapore dollars. There's only one, which is this one, the Sapphire Radeon Nitro Plus 7900 XTX. Only one listed at 800 Singapore dollars. And the rest is listed at like 950, is closer to 1,000. Because the 7900 XTX will perform in a similar performance range as the 4080. And you can see 4080s are also selling for similar price. So about 900 in the above 800 category. Then 7900 XTX will definitely outperform the 9070 XT. I have a review video, I'll probably link it here, which I've tested both GPUs, and definitely the 7900 XTX will outperform a 9070 XT in most games. Only except games where you need to run FSR4, then maybe the 9070 XT might be good. Moving on, above 800 Singapore dollars, each of these GPUs, well, if you buy any of these above 800 Singapore dollar GPUs, you will have your own reasons for buying it. They are all expensive, right? Above 800 is really expensive. At this kind of price range, when you're paying more than 800 Singapore dollars, I really will recommend you buying brand new. So if you're paying more than 800 Singapore dollars, my go-to recommendation will be a brand new 9070 XT for about 800 Singapore dollars. But somehow, if you don't want AMD, you want to stick with NVIDIA, my recommendations will be a 4080. So let's see if we can find a cheap 4080 used or a 4080 Super. 4080. Is there anyone listed at 900? That was what I managed to find before that. So this is the only one. A 4080 list and a Founders Edition card as well. Founders Edition cards are pretty rare in Singapore. Listed for 900 Singapore dollars. So at 900 Singapore dollars, it is going to perform the same as 4080 performs the same as the 7900 XTX. And you get DLSS. 16 gigabytes of VRAM should be enough. The XTX from AMD has 24 gigabytes of VRAM, so you will never run out of VRAM with that card. So it's really up to you. Do you want more VRAM, more future-proof? Then the 7900 XTX may be it. But if you want NVIDIA support like CUDA, DLSS, you want to do some AI, or maybe your NVIDIA GPU is better for your video editing workloads, then 4080 is actually better because there's not many GPUs that's going to perform better than the 7900 XTX or the 4080. You only have 4080 Super, 5080, 4090, and 5090. So basically, this is actually almost the top end of the top end that you can get for this price range. Anything more than that, you will have to go for the 4090 or the 5090, which is a whole separate bracket, right? You have to pay double to triple of what you're paying for a $900 4080. You can also consider a 4080 Super, but you have to pay about 200 Singapore dollars more for just a little few percentage points of performance gain. But the 4080, this is really the last one that's available at 900 Singapore dollars. So once you missed it, if other people are selling 4080s for more than 1,000 Singapore dollars, then might as well go for a 4080 Super. So that is if you want to go Team NVIDIA. Other than that, a 5080, the cheapest I can find one is at 1,003, which is actually a decent deal because 5080 brand news are about 1,004 to 1,005. And then there was one seller listing his at 1,003, this one. So this one seller is listing his local, this is a monthly set, which is made from China, yes, but I don't know whether it comes with local receipt and local warranty. Yeah, he bought from VPC, invoice will be provided. So I assume that there is local warranty. I hope. Maybe you want to contact VPC to clarify a bit further. So if it has local warranty for 1,300 Singapore dollars, a 5080 actually is a pretty good deal, because you'll be saving about 100 to 150 Singapore dollars by I mean, the other cheapest 5080 I can find brand new will probably be the Shadow 3X OC from MSI. Brand new is about 1,440 if I remember correctly. So 150 Singapore dollars more. Okay, other than that, cheapest 4090s, 2,000 plus. So I put here 2360. I think one of it will be 2360, but the majority of it, 4090s are selling for about 2,000 plus. There you can see some really cheap ones. Take note that they are very frank with you that there's no core and no VRAM. That means the whole PCB has been taken out. All the parts have been taken out, right? Because just like what Gamers Nexus has reviewed, Singapore actually is one of the popular destinations for stripping 4090s and 5090s, because the Chinese people actually they ship it through Singapore, and then when they come to Singapore they strip away the core and the memory chips and all that, transplant into Chinese PCBs, and then ship it to China to avoid the export restrictions. Yeah, so take note that don't buy those without core and yeah, don't buy those empty 4090s. But most of the 4090s are 2360. So there's one listed at 2360, 4090. Yeah, this is the kind of price you have to expect to pay for a 4090. And at this price range, I would say buying used is a pretty risky thing, because if you buy used and you don't have warranty, or the warranty runs out and your 4090 power connector burns up, you are stuck with a $2,000 paperweight, right? Or you might try to find somewhere to repair it. I don't know who's skilled enough to repair 4090s in Singapore, but well, yeah. So anyway, moving on, the last GPU, 5090. 5090, obviously don't buy used, try and buy brand new. Even the listings here in Carousell are usually for brand new listings, because you really want to have a warranty to back up your $3,000 plus or $4,000 GPU. So brand new, if you're not going for the ultra premium like Astra versions, you can actually find 5090s for about 3,000-ish Singapore dollars. Where's the lowest I can get it? 5090s, 3,008, 3,004, yeah, 3,004. So I put here 3,320. It's close. So around 3,400 Singapore dollars is the lowest price you can expect to pay for like a brand new 5090. And if you're buying a 5090, you have your own reasons, probably for AI, probably if you want the best of the best, and so on and so forth. So anyway, this video has dragged on really more than long enough. These are the cheapest used GPU deals in Singapore for each price range. If you have more questions, feel free to post them in the comments below. If you find this video useful for you, please give it a like. Yeah, give it a like and give my channel a subscribe. And we will see you guys in the next one.